Hello there, gang, and welcome to another episode of Displaying Model Behaviour, the Earth's mightiest action figure video podcast. So take off your pants, crack a beer, and let's talk toys. Let's talk about building the ultimate 90s Spider-Man display with our favourite action figure line, Marvel Legends. So guys, this is one that I've been wanting to do for the longest time, so sit back, relax, I'm going to Bob Ross this thing, show you the best way to display what are quintessentially 90s Spider-Man characters. But before we do that, a little word from our sponsors. And of course, my sponsor is me. So if you enjoy this show and you want to support the channel, then you can go over to patreon.com/displaying model behavior. Toss a couple of bucks my way. If you do, then you can see all the exclusive videos on there, and also you can become a model behavior producer, and that means that when I do the live stream call-in shows, you can jump to the front of the queue, be on the channel itself, and have your say about anything you want to discuss in the ridiculous action figure, movies, comic books, wrestling, pop culture world that we love to cover. If you don't have any bucks to toss my way, that's not a problem though. You can still enjoy all the best content for free right here on YouTube, and when we do the call-in shows, you can still get your opportunity to have your say. So actually, yeah, you don't get a huge amount extra on Patreon. It's just to toss a couple of bucks my way. It's a terrible sales technique. Anyway, on with the show. Now guys, just like I did with my previous videos on building a classic 60s, 70s Spider-Man display, and then the next one with a classic 80s Spider-Man display, I'm not gonna reuse any characters or figures. Maybe I might reuse characters, but not figures. So that means that characters who were hugely prominent in the 90s, like Darkhawk, Electro, Rhino, all the Sinister Six type guys, they're not gonna be in here. So don't start messaging me saying, excuse me, you forgot Chameleon. No, I didn't. I included him in the previous videos. So just get off my back. Just give me a break, okay? Trying to do a YouTube show here. So these are the quintessential 90s characters, and who better to kick things off than my guy, Ben Reilly, the Scarlet Spider. When you think 90s Spider-Man, it's all about the Clone Saga, which is funny because actually the Clone Saga only lasted a couple of years, but boy did it have a lasting impact. And Ben Reilly was introduced to the world as the new Spider-Man. He was put there to replace Peter Parker. So Marvel put the whole kind of marketing push behind him. He got the Brock Lesnar push. He was made to look like just a cool, badass, likable substitute for the Peter Parker who we had seen for the last 30 years, who had kind of got a little bit glum and gloomy and just not so likable. They thought, let's wipe the slate clean and give a brand new shiny Spider-Man. And for me, being a brand new Spider-Man reader at the time, I wasn't especially attached to Peter Parker, so I latched onto Ben Reilly like a baby bird. I was like, yes, this is my guy. I love this character. And then they killed him. I was like, jeez. But at least we have an awesome Marvel Legend figure to remember him by. This is on the Pizza Spider-Man buck, and this particular version is from the Retro Wave. There's also the one from the Rhino Wave, which is mold-wise the same, except he's got a lighter kind of color scheme. He has some black outline around the lenses, which I was never a fan of. In the comics, it was always kind of clear that it was just white lenses. So I think the retro one captures that perfectly. Hopefully we're gonna get a retro version, like a new retro version on the retro buck of the Scarlet Spider. There's no hints towards it. I'm just fingers crossed hoping, because I would love a new zhuzhed up version. That would be really cool. In the meantime though, this Ben Reilly, who also comes with a nice blonde head you can put on there as well, even though he never had blonde hair while dressed as the Scarlet Spider in the 616, but I'll allow it, because that head's versatile, so it's fine. This Ben Reilly is perfect for the 90s. Now there's one other thing you could consider as well, which is that there are some other versions of Ben Reilly. You've got him in his sensational Spider-Man suit. There was one that came out in the pizza buck again, and this one was really cool because you had the Carnage swap out parts, so you could recreate how he looked during the story where he got bonded with the Carnage symbiote. That was really, really cool. Also, you've got the beautiful new retro wave sensational Spider-Man costume, and this looks so cool. I was really tempted to put these guys in the display, but I thought, no, I only want one version of a character in there. So I've gone with Scarlet Spider because it's such a iconic costume. Even for people who don't like it, it's still kind of iconic. I think it was even joked about at the time, like, dude, he's wearing a hoodie, like, as a superhero costume? What are you doing? And now folks love it. I know I certainly do. So if I'm going to have one quintessential Ben Reilly, it's got to be the Scarlet Spider, and that's a perfect way to kick off this display. Now we've got something I love, which is a legacy character. I love the way different versions of the characters will evolve over time. So first of all, we had the Green Goblin. Then in the 80s, it was the Hobgoblin, and now in the 90s, it's the Demogoblin. Probably the lesser of the goblins as far as stature in comic book history is concerned, but still such a cool character. So Jason Macendale, the Hobgoblin, he'd kind of lost his mojo, so he made a deal with these demonic forces to get more power, and ended up being possessed by this demon spirit, and thus creating the Demogoblin. And eventually the two sides split quite acrimoniously, and we had Hobgoblin and Demogoblin. And Demogoblin just looks wicked, just a demonic version of a goblin. And this Build-A-Figure, dude, I'm gonna say it already, mwah, chef's kiss. Normally, if it's a Build-A-Figure and it's a normal sized character, I'm like, oh, come on, son. Why are you playing this like that? We gotta buy all these figures just to make a normal sized character? But then you throw in the glider. Oh, that fiery glider looks amazing. Then with a little stand as well to put it on. Then the gnarly facial features, their special claws. This guy looks so wicked. The only thing he's missing is a pumpkin bomb. Like, come on, dude, how can you give us a goblin without a pumpkin bomb? Get out of here. But I'll allow it, I'll forgive it, because man, this guy looks awesome. Then I love characters that you can pair up together, and Demogoblin's kind of pet, I suppose, was Doppelganger. Doppelganger, another big time favorite of mine. He's in my boy stable of characters who are like not great characters, but I just kind of love them. A demonic, twisted version of Spider-Man with razor sharp teeth, 6 arms, all with claws, just a maniacal, crazy, animalistic character made by, I think it was the Magus in Infinity Crusade. I think a whole bunch of demonic versions of superheroes were created, and only Doppelganger seems to survive. He's been killed so many times, and then it's just like, oh no, he just walked it off. It's okay. Now, what's a shame is that this figure, it's not a good figure. I think Marvel Legends team were like, okay, we want to make Doppelganger, but we don't want to spend much money. So they kind of took a Amazing Spider-Man 2 figure and just jammed a couple of arms in there, and there's no torso articulation. It's a very basic paint job, and there's not much to it. But at the same time, it's Doppelganger. So I gotta love him, and paired up with the Demogoblin, they look great together. Now, it feels like we're getting a bit of a theme here, so let's roll with it with Carnage. Okay, so Venom, of course, was the symbiote of the 90s, but he debuted in the 80s, so he kind of got his shine in the 80s. But Carnage, he was the next step, which then launched 10 bajillion other symbiotes. But this guy was like just such a game changer, where basically this was the start of things getting a little rougher in Spider-Man, a little nastier, and that's where things actually started to go down in Peter Parker's life. It all began, I feel, with Cletus Cassidy kind of changing the game. Now, this is the newest version of Carnage with the beautiful sculpted on tendrils and all that kind of stuff. Looks really cool. But if you want to go super 90s, then you can always get the Monster Venom Wave Carnage, which is just pure Mark Bagley, with the wonderful blade hand as well, the Cletus head. Those guys, they look awesome. I sold mine and I'm like, I only need one Carnage, so I'll keep the more modern one, but dude, I kind of missed that one because he looked the bomb. But either flavor of Carnage you want to go for, they look evil, sick, twisted, maniacal, everything that is Cletus Cassidy. And what would Cletus Cassidy be without his main squeeze, Shriek? Well, I found out because I don't have Shriek anymore. Yep, I sold her because she was part of the Armadillo wave, and I didn't want any of the other characters, and it was easier to sell them if I sold them all as one big bundle. But I got to admit, I kind of regret selling Shriek. I was a bit disappointed with her at first because I was like, this is just, there's no detail sculpted, it's all just painted on the body, the head looks kind of weird, got a Kentucky waterfall mullet kind of haircut, I'm not down for that. So I got rid of her, and then afterwards I was like, well actually, it's the new female buck, so that is a nice buck with the double jointed elbows and no pins, and you know, actually that mullet haircut, it does match some of the early Maximum Carnage panels, and dang it, I'm going to have to rebuy Shriek now, aren't I? So that's one missing from the collection, but if you want to have your full Maximum Carnage set, as I think I do now, you got to get your hands on her. Now another character who was super push when he was introduced in the 90s was Darkhawk. Darkhawk I'm not that familiar with, but I kept seeing him pop up in Spider-Man and Venom in particular. Darkhawk was the new cool hip 90s thing that Marvel were trying to introduce, and I can see the logic. He is kind of a cool design. He doesn't look like he would have come out of the 70s or even the 80s. There's something quintessentially 90s about him, and I dig it. I know he's kind of cosmic inspired, got a gem that gives him his sort of Darkhawk powers. That's about as far as it goes, but I kind of lump him mentally in with that great kind of mid-90s pre-Clone Saga era when Spider-Man was just teaming up with everyone in the Marvel Universe, especially the street level guys. He was really closely connected with guys like the New Warriors, Punisher, Moon Knight, all that kind of stuff, and Darkhawk was a big piece of that. And actually this figure, it's a really nice figure. Now let's go back to the symbiotes. With the first Life Foundation character, we're going to go with Phage. And Phage, like, I didn't like too much at first because it's pretty much just a repainted Bucky cap with a couple of little extras. But the more I sort of look at him, they've put some nice details on the jaws with the nice gums showing up there. And then you got these bone yellow type teeth that look kind of gnarly. His hands, dagger protrusion sort of thing. That's kind of cool. So Phage, I've kind of come around to, but I still feel a bit like the Life Foundation symbiotes. That is Legend's chance to go, okay, what's the cheapest repaint we can do with a couple of accessories? And it's like, well, that's a good example of that, but still, it's the Life Foundation symbiotes. You gotta have them. And this is the first one. Now, similar to Darkhawk, we have the human rocket, Nova. Nova, again, part of the New Warriors, and also just a quintessentially, for me, 90s character. Lots of appearances, lots of pushes and crossovers, and he's another one of those sort of teen-type heroes who's kind of finding his feet with these crazy powers that he has. So he and Spider-Man made a good combination, and they had a lot of team-ups, and they were all good fun. Again, just makes me think 90s. Although, where was he during Maximum Carnage? That would have been a help, Nova. But then again, that would have been a little bit overpeed, maybe. Otherwise, it would have just been the good guys mugging Cletus Cassidy, which would have also been quite funny. This figure's kind of basic, though. It's a bit of a... it feels like one of those ones that they made to go, well, people want a Nova, so we'll just give them a Nova. So there's not much going on there. It's a little bit underwhelming. But still, it's 90s, so he gets included. Now, probably the most famous Life Foundation symbiote, it's got to be Scream, who's now known as Silence in the comics. But of course, Scream has gone through multiple hosts, so the yellow symbiote is what's kind of famous. The people who it's bonded with, not so much. They don't tend to last very long. But the iconic look of Scream with the crazy huge hair with all the barbs and spikes and things in there looks really wicked. I dig it as a design, and of course that Carnage style flowing liquid type body where the colors always change and shift and the patterns don't stay the same. That looks really cool. So it's a really fun character to view, and I feel like she's had a fair shake in the Marvel universe, but I would love to see more of her because it's just kind of cool. The character Marvel Legend, they could have done more with her, just like I said with Phage. There's no sort of extra sculpted detail on the body. The hair's okay, but it's just one big block. You know, it'd be nice if there were bits kind of coming off of it and stuff, and if the facial features were a bit more indented so it looked more carved and sculpted. There's a lot more you could have done with that, but what we've got is basic and functional, so she gets to go on the display. Let's start building out our New Warriors now with Rage. So we've got Nova, and now we've got another big bruiser street level type character, and I love that. Rage is kind of a funny character because kind of like, I think, Billy Batson, he's a little kid who gets these superpowers that like turn him into a big Roidy Magoo badass, but he still a child. And I think he joined the Avengers for a time, and then finally Captain America realized that he was actually just a kid, and he was like, whoa, 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 you must be at least this tall to ride the roller coaster, kid. All right, this is... I'm not going to throw you into battle against lethal opposition. What kind of a guy? Oh, Bucky. Yeah, I'm not going to do that again. Okay, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, chicken and rice. So Rage then went over to the New Warriors, and he did very well. He's not really very prominent in the comics anymore. I'm not sure what happened to him. Maybe he's still kicking around, I just haven't seen him. But I love the Lucha mask. The Lucha mask looks great, and then with the wonderful jacket, waistcoat as well. It's kind of basic, but what they have done looks really effective. I love that the mask is a separate piece, so it actually looks like there's some depth. The eyes are set back, the mask is on top. It looks really cool like that. He doesn't have many other accessories though, which would have been nice. He's just got the fisted hand, so he's like, put up your dukes. But still, for me personally, he's a real favorite. So continuing with the New Warriors, we have Firestar, especially famous for Spider-Man and his amazing friends, with Iceman too. Now this is a version of Firestar I'm not a fan of, to be honest. It is a very 90s costume, 80s, 90s. When New Warriors first started, this was completely her look. So that's fine. But I much preferred the mid-90s one, where it was more classic mid-90s cool with the jacket and glasses and kind of a flame sort of effect on her face. That looked wicked. This is a bit more goofy and basic, but it fills that slot in the New Warriors. One problem I found with the figure, which actually is just, it's a human thing you can't help. When you have a mask that's kind of going in at the middle, you can't help but end up looking a bit cross-eyed. I've noticed this with the Thor Ragnarok King Thor as well, like with the helmet on and the angles going there, he looks a bit derpy and cross-eyed, when actually he's not. It's just how your attention is drawn. It's interesting, and Firestar kind of suffers with that, but she's a founder member of the New Warriors, so of course she gets to go in. Now with the 90s being the era of team-ups, of course there is Deathlock. Deathlock got another big push in the 90s, and Spider-Man, there's one of the most iconic sort of Spider-Man images of Cyborg Spidey along with Deathlock, a story that I covered in As Told by Toys. And now this was a great little team-up where Spider-Man just got injured and he had all these prosthetics put on him. So he wasn't turned into a cyborg, but he had the cyborg look. More on that later. But Deathlock, I think this figure is, I wouldn't want to say underrated, because most people rate him as being a really good figure, because he is. He reminds me a lot of modern G.I. Joes with the number of accessories and things he comes with. He's got a pistol that you can holster. He's got the huge big minigun with the bullets he can hold in his hand or have over his shoulder, however you want to display him. Big old backpack and a gnarly zombie kind of face as well. I'm a big fan of this Deathlock figure. I'm not even a big fan of the character. I haven't read many of his appearances in the comics, but just based on his look, yeah, I've got a lot of time for him. Now let's round out our Life Foundation symbiotes with Lasher. Again, just on the Pizza Spider-Man body, so not a huge amount done to him. But he does have the nice tendrils coming out of his back, although, oh my goodness, they do have a habit of falling out. You could always glue them in if you want, but I don't like altering figures, you know. I'm just going to put up with it the way that it is. It's not too bad, just don't knock him like a clumsy oaf, which is what I do all the time. I like the green color scheme, and just like Scream, it's got that flowing kind of effect, so it's always moving and shifting like living liquid. That's really cool. I feel like some of the Life Foundation symbiotes, they're a little undersized. Well, I say some. Phage, I feel, is a little bit undersized. But I think that Lasher, actually, he sort of fits the image of that character in my mind a lot more. I think Lasher always was a bit more sort of small and nimble and slick and slimy, so that actually works really well. So that's 3 Life Foundation symbiotes. For the love of goodness, Hasbro, will you give us the final 2, please? And now we have Morbius. Blah! I can't remember if I included original OG Morbius in my 60s and 70s display. I don't think I did. I might have to go back and watch that. I mean, heck, it was a fun video. But this version of Morbius, this is as 90s as they come. This is total straight out of Maximum Carnage, Midnight Suns. This is 90s Morbius. And I think he looks really cool. Super basic figure in as much as no different accessories or head swaps or hands or anything. But what we do have looks kind of nice. I like the whole zip and button kind of suit. It's very sort of German underground club in the 90s kind of look. I would imagine I wasn't going to any German underground clubs in the 90s. I was 10. But this is a fun gimmick sort of style. He's got the swishing cape in the wind and also just the really cool morbius kind of face that I think is very, very effective. Hair blowing in the breeze. Yeah, I really like this vampire. And then rounding out the new warriors for now is Night Thrasher, which is kind of a fun figure. There's so much more going on than you would actually expect there to be. Like everything on him, all of his armor, it seems to be uniquely sculpted just for him. You can't really appreciate it so much because it's all just this shiny black. So not much stands out. You think, it's just a regular black body. But no, they've put a lot of work into this. Then with the extra details and sculpting on his helmet, mask, with all the armor, he's got his skateboard on the back. Night Thrasher is genuinely a bit of an underrated figure, I think. I got a lot of time for this guy. So we've got a little sort of core group of new warriors, and we're getting Speedball soon as well. So that's a big charter member who's really going to make a big sort of impact in bulking out that team. If we can get characters like Namorta, Justice, Turbo, that's going to be awesome. I'd love to see this team fully come together. Now it's about damn time that we give Mary Jane her due. I can't remember if I used this figure in the 80s, but it was in the 90s where the character really came into her own, I think. During her sort of initial few years in the comics, she was that kind of classic party girl, ditzy, sort of slightly superficial kind of character. But in the 90s, once she got married and actually was completely the rock for Peter Parker, that developed the character so well. And this Mary Jane from the 2-pack, I think they just captured her beautifully. Bit of a J. Scott Campbell sort of vibe going on, I think, with the little freckles there, and the eyes actually look very sort of characterful, if that is a word. They're not that kind of dead-eyed mannequin sort of look, but it actually looks like she's got some sass and some presence and some sort of accountability to her. That's really cool. Not bad for a little plastic action figure. So in the 90s, Peter was going through so much, from just absolutely hitting rock bottom and then clawing his way out. Mary Jane was there the whole time. She is a quintessential part of 90s Spider-Man. Now, speaking of Peter hitting rock bottom, when he was on his way down, one of the people he crossed paths with was Daredevil, but not your regular happy-go-lucky, swashbuckling type Daredevil. This was fall from grace, armored, grim and gritty Daredevil, which it gets a lot of stick, but I actually think this costume is badass. The bright red Daredevil costume, yeah, of course it's classic, but this actually makes a lot more sense for a street vigilante. Mostly black to hide in the shadows, then some solid metallic red armored pieces, and then some just straight up like battle armor on there as well. I think this looks wicked. I think just visually, this is the coolest Daredevil that Marvel Legends have made so far. I'm hoping we're going to get a new classic red one on the retro buck, but time will tell. In the meantime, though, this fall from grace, I think that was the story in which this costume was sort of introduced. This Daredevil is classic for the 90s. This is where Spider-Man decided that he was going to abandon Peter Parker and embrace the spider. So he went to Daredevil. He was like, hey, your life's fallen to pieces and you've gone slightly insane. Can you teach me how to do that too? And he was like, yeah, okay, go on then. So that was a fun little story for a while. But this figure, yeah, it's super awesome.
And now, we are Venom.
And we've already seen this figure in the 1980s display. But if you want to go 1990s, then how about hitting yourself up with the Monster Venom, which is much more of an exaggerated version of the character, which I used to have but don't anymore, so I'm going with the older one. But if you want to differentiate original Venom and more crazy Venom, this is a good path to go down. Now also, if you wanted to go outside Legends, there is a Select Venom, which has all these different heads and arms that were sprouting off of him in a storyline called Venom the Madness, which is totally a very 90s kind of look. It's crazy that this one little random miniseries has spawned quite a famous look for the character, but it's because it was really weird. It was a bizarre story. But if you want to stick with Marvel Legends, then Monster Deluxe Venom, that's a good one to go for. Or if you just want to hold your horses a little bit, oh my goodness, the Venom from the Null 2-pack looks like a perfect comic book Venom on the movie body, so he's big and hulking. This is going to be my absolutely premium perfect Eddie Brock Venom. The only problem though is that that figure has Venom toes. I'm a fan of Venom toes, but also the toes weren't introduced until much more recently. So it doesn't really make sense to have toes in the 90s. But you know what? I'll forgive it and allow it because it doesn't bother me too much. But yeah, straight up 90s, you want to kind of go for, I think, actually the Absorbing Man Venom. But I used him in the 80s, so it's kind of a trade-off. And between most of Venom's appearances, when he wasn't menacing Spider-Man, he was imprisoned at the Vault. So of course you need a couple of Vault guardsmen. I just had one and then I sold him on. So we're in trouble, guys. There's no one actually to guard the Vault in my collection. But the Vault guardsman, I feel, was a little bit of a missed opportunity for Hasbro, because that would be a perfect army building figure. But they didn't give you any swap out parts. So it's just the one same guy with the tiny little gun that's like, really? You're going to use that to defend yourself against the Rhino? Good luck. But if they'd given like some slightly different hands, weapons, armor pieces, you could have army built the bejesus out of these guys, really made them a fun sort of accessory and new ways of entertaining the different designs and looks. But no, just went for a very generic approach to that one. So swing and a miss there, Hasbro. But it meant that I could actually sell it and not feel too bad about it. But still, if you want to completely round out that Vault kind of look for the 90s, then yeah, of course, you got to get a Vault guardsman. And finally, the man himself, Peter Parker Spider-Man. And for the 90s, you are spoiled for choice as to what version of the character you could go for. So of course, there's Pizza and Retro Spider-Man, but those have been used previously in different videos, so I wanted to refrain from doing that. So there's a few unique costumes from the 90s you can go for. One that is so quintessentially 90s is Cosmic Spider-Man. This was when he got the, is it Omega Power? I think so. And he just gained like a super godlike force, and during this time it was kind of fun. He threw down with Magneto and the Hulk, and he was just whooping people left and right. But of course, it was a fire that burned brightly for a short time. But when he was in that Captain Universe style design, that was really fun, and there is a Marvel Legend that totally represents it. Or in the late 90s, Peter took a trip to the Negative Zone, and we've got the Negative Zone Spider-Man, which is kind of fun with the inverted, well, it's not inverted color scheme, it's just black and white, negative color scheme. It looks kind of fun and striking, often referred to as the Oreo Spider-Man, but really, I mean, this costume lasted for like an issue, maybe, so it's not what you would want for an iconic Spider-Man look. Now, one that is really big time 90s is the Raft SpiderMan, who's totally based on the Todd McFarlane design of the character, or as much as it could be, because it is just a Pizza Spider-Man repaint. Slightly different eyes, slightly dark color scheme, but this is as close as they've managed to get to the Todd McFarlane look, and that is like, Todd McFarlane kicked off the 90s in a big way. So that's one that you can really associate with this era, so that's a good one to go for. But you know what? Even when I was a crazy must-have everything type collector, never had the Raft Spider-Man, so that one escaped me. But one that didn't is Cyborg SpiderMan. And look, just like I was saying with Negative, it only appeared for about 1 or 2 issues. But what a great little action figure we got out of it. This is super fun, and it's a design that lasted the test of time. Even being featured in the Sony Spider-Man game, it keeps popping up. It's fun and quirky and kind of ridiculous, and granted, I have no real sort of canonical reason to need to keep it in my collection, but I still do because it's just fun. I totally dig it. However, we all know that coming out at the end of the year, if not sooner, hopefully, will be the Spider-Man and Spinneret 2-pack. And this is going to be the ultimate, quintessential, classic 90s Spider-Man look. He looks fantastic. Pinless. Oh my goodness. With the lighter colors and the big eyes. I cannot wait to get this dude. I was a bit on the shelf about getting him because I thought, well, I've got Retro Spider-Man. Is it really that much of a change? And then I thought, hang on, Dave, like, you are like the Marvel Legends guy. Along with all the other Marvel Legends guys. It's not an exclusive title. But also, like, you are the Spider-Man guy. So how can you not have the best Marvel Legend of your favorite character? Nah. That just has to be done. So when I get him, he will be my standalone, awesome, ultimate, perfect Peter Parker Spider-Man. Cannot wait for that. But in the meantime, you can use whichever one you want because it's your collection, and I'm pretty sure with all the options you have, it's gonna look badass. And folks, that does it for my 90s Spider-Man display. What did you think? Were there any characters that I should have included or didn't, or ones that I forgot about? Comment below, let me know. And if you like what you see here and you want to see more, then join the 6-1 Clicks by clicking the like, share, and subscribe buttons. That really helps out the channel. And if you want to go a little further and toss a couple of bucks my way, then you can do by going over to patreon.com/displaying model behavior. Just like these saviors of model behavior did. They are all Patreon producers now, so whenever I do live streams, then you get to jump to the front of the queue and appear on model behavior, and we can sit back and talk shop about all the things we love so much. And also, of course, on Patreon, you can watch all the little exclusive videos on there too. So guys, thanks very much for watching, and until next time, keep displaying model behavior.
Cup of coffee. Coffee.